Hi, my name is Doug.
And I'm Kelly.
And we are the lead pastors at McKees Rocks Assembly of God. We're so excited that you've chosen to join us online for our stream today. We hope and pray it's a great and meaningful time for you as you get to be a part of our online community. Our church is here to serve the neighborhood and to be neighbors. So as you enjoy online community today, we hope and pray you can join us in person one day. Hi, my name is Doug.
And I'm Kelly.
And we are the lead pastors at McKees Rocks Assembly of God. We're so excited that you've chosen to join us online for our stream today. We hope and pray it's a great and meaningful time for you as you get to be a part of our online community. Our church is here to serve the neighborhood and to be neighbors. So as you enjoy online community today, we hope and pray you can join us in person one day. Hi, my name is Doug.
And I'm Kelly.
And we are the lead pastors at McKees Rocks Assembly of God. We're so excited that you've chosen to join us online for our stream today. We hope and pray it's a great, meaningful time for you as you get to be a part of our online community. Our church is here to serve the neighborhood and to be neighbors. So as you enjoy online community today, we hope and pray you can join us in person one day. Hi, my name is Doug.
And I'm Kelly.
And we are the lead pastors at McKees Rocks Assembly of God. We're so excited that you've chosen to join us.
We dismiss
online.
the kids. What we're going to do today, though, I'm going to take kids that are in kindergarten through 6th grade downstairs. Those kids are going to do the egg hunt during the service. And then after service, anybody that is ages 2 to 4 will do their egg hunt after the service has completed. So then you can come downstairs and bring your 2 to 4-year-olds, and they'll have their own little kind of little bit more safer, they won't get trampled on type thing. So we just want to make sure all of our kiddos are safe and doing things in a safe way here. So the 2 to 4-year-olds, if you would like, if they want something to do, there is coloring pages and things in our little back clubhouse back there. They're more than welcome to hang out there, or they can come downstairs and hang out. But it's up to you. So I just wanted to give that out. So kids, you can be dismissed. You can come downstairs.
Awesome. Thank you. Awesome. Yeah, we're trying to keep all the kids from being trampled, but I know Easter egg hunts, and so we're just trying to minimize. No, I'm just kidding. They're gonna have such a good time down there. Thanks so much for the team that helped put everything together yesterday. It does look awesome, right? Like, I was so jealous yesterday, and I snuck a few pieces of candy, extra candy from the eggs. There's plenty left. I don't apologize. If I haven't had a chance to meet you, my name is Doug. I'm the lead pastor here. It's such an honor to be able to serve you on this Easter morning. He is risen. That's what we're here to celebrate. And so, yeah, so pumped that y'all are here with us. So like my lovely wife said, like, awesome. Look at all the kids that went downstairs. It's crazy. They're going to have such a blast. Just prep yourself for the yelling and screaming. That's okay. I'll do a little bit of it too to try and cover it over, but man, the kids are going to be crazy down there. And that's okay. That's what we want, right? We're a church with the neighborhood at heart. We're a church with the community at heart, so we want to make sure kids are feeling welcome, have a fun, safe place to get all sugared up so we can send them home with you. So enjoy in advance. Again, we don't apologize for that. So we are going to talk this morning about a little bit about the Easter story. But I want to tell you a story starting from the top, all right? And so if you can use a little bit of holy imagination with me. Oh, make sure my slides are there. A story. There was a young woman born into an amazing family and one of many brothers and sisters all running around. She kind of fell in like the middle order of brothers and sisters there. And found herself, just a happy kid. Always one of those kids who was so full of joy, so vibrant, always one of the life of the party. You know what it's like to be a middle sibling? I've always been the oldest. I only have one other. But if you're a middle sibling, right, you're kind of like, you're the one who gets away with stuff, right? Or maybe that's the baby. I don't know. But like, this kid was the joy, the life of the party, ran around, had a ton of fun, and was born into a really, really happy family. Mom and dad stayed together not just for the kids, but stayed together because they love one another. And she saw that love. Over and over and over, she would look at her parents and say, I want that one day. I want to be able to look at, and I'm sure she was a kid, so she probably didn't think this deep about it, but I want to look at my husband and say, I love that man. And so she grew up, as all kids hopefully do, and saw her brothers and sisters go off, and they got married too. In her culture, it was a culture of male power. Like, that was just kind of the culture she was born into. And so men got to choose their wives, and there was a whole ceremony around it. But she saw her sisters, and her sisters were happy. And she said, I want that one day. I want to look into the face of my husband, and I want to be so full of joy. And I want to love that man like crazy. Until finally one day, a man approached her dad and said, I would like to marry your daughter. I remember when I did this at a diner in Beaver, scared out of my mind. And like if you've met my father-in-law, he's been here a couple times. He's a docile man. He's pretty easy to get along with. But I was like shaking. And I usually drink a lot of coffee. I'd like 1 cup of coffee, and I was still like, yeah, so like, let's eat. Can I have some chili? Scared to death out of my mind. This man approached her father and was totally cool. I would like to marry your daughter. And so he did what good fathers did and checked him out. Things seemed okay. Said yes. Planned a big ceremony, huge party. Weddings back in their day, in their culture, were a massive event, and everyone would get together. You'd have like the family, the family you would typically like send an invite to, but they're so far away that they only send a gift, so you don't have to pay for their plate. Anyone else? Just me? Okay. They were like, let's invite him. Let's get him out here. It'll be so much fun. And so they had a huge, massive ceremony. And the girl was so happy. She had a husband. She had a husband she could love. And she was going to love this man. And she was so over the moon elated by all of it. They get married. They go on their lives, and all of a sudden, things start to change a little bit. Man starts to mistreat her. Starts to become a little bit abusive. Starts to really get in her face about things that, shouldn't get in people's face about. In fact, in her culture, it was common for divorce. So common that if I, as the man, had burnt toast on my breakfast plate, I could send her on their way. But nothing more than a certificate say, I divorce you. So that's what he did. He shipped her off, said, we're done. You're done. And a little part of her, though she was sad, was a little bit grateful. Because she was in this abusive relationship. She was finally free. But at the same time, she was in a culture where divorce was not allowed. Where divorce was a strict taboo. That she would be set aside from most of the people around her. Now, people would look at her and say, listen, we know him. He was a jerk. You'll be okay. And then finally, she met another man. And this time, again, all she wanted was that love. All she wanted was to be a wife. And she wanted to love her husband like no woman had ever loved her husband. And this time, she found this amazing dude. This really, really nice guy. She got married again. And this time, the dude was good. So happy. She was so happy about her life now. She was so excited and so in love with this guy who smelled like oranges. I'm just throwing that in there. So, after a while, she becomes very insecure about herself because this guy is so good, the nicest dude ever. And she's like, ugh, I don't know if I really deserve this. I don't know if, and you know what happens when we get that kind of like that insecurity inside of us where we start to think and we start to poke and prod, and all of a sudden we're the ones who are kind of like picking at things and being like, I don't know. Why did you do it this way? Oh, I'm so sorry, I can change that. Yeah, you should change. That's not coming from a place of anger. It's coming from that little place of insecurity inside of her. And she starts poking and prodding at her husband until finally the insecurity gets so much the best of her that she walks away and she leaves. Heartbroken, the man goes on with his life. And now everyone looks around at her and says, oh no. Strike one. Fool me once, that's strike one. Fool me twice, that's strike three. That was an Office quote if anyone got that. No? No one? Okay, that's okay. But she caught all the eyes looking at her. Everyone staring and saying, we know who you really are now. And so often when we're in that place of insecurity, what do? We just look for something to fill that hole in our heart. So that's what she did. Man after man after man. Over and over again. And people would continue to stare at her and just be like, listen, she's just, and they would probably use some pejorative terms that I can't use here in church. And so, in her world, she would be the one who's responsible for getting water for her household. And that would typically be something that you do in the very early time in the day. Because you know why? Carrying big jugs of water is very heavy. And doing that in the heat of the day, in the middle of the sunny warmth, is hot and bad. And so she would do that every single day just to care for her family and make sure that, husband was taken care of. He would treat her like garbage. She would come back and say, I brought the water back. But after a while, she started to have these conversations with the women at the well and say, they would look down on her and say, I don't want you here with me. If it's okay with you, can you just not exist? We recognize who you are. We see you. We've talked to husbands 3, 4, and 6. I don't think 6 is actually your husband. Am I right? And they do that little like Maury Povich kind of like, mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? And finally it got to her and broke her. She said, listen, we still need water. I'm just going to go at noon. I'm just going to go when it's hot out. And that takes a toll on a person's body, right? Like some of y'all are workers out there in the hot, hot sun. John, I'm thinking of you. You're out there working and baking in that sun. They were in the middle of that every single day. She would walk up, take her 2 big water jars, walk to the well, fill them up, walk home, sweating and burning the whole entire way. And every time she would take that journey, she would journey not just carrying the weight of her water jars, but carrying the weight of the shame of the fact that she had to do this in the middle of the day because everyone would look at her like she was a bad person. That every single day she not only carried the water, but she struggled underneath the shame that lived inside of her and ate at her every single moment that she was walking there. Wasn't the kind of place that you could pop in an earbud and throw on a podcast or watch TikTok to drown out your own inner voices. No, she lived with that inner voice. We know who you are. We see you. I see you. And so she did what she had to do so she wasn't seen. She did what she had to do to escape the prying eyes of every person who was going to judge her, who was going to come at her. Until finally, one day, she did exactly what she always does, and something drastically changed for her.
Would you give me a drink? Did you hear me?
That bad, huh?
What?
You, a Jew, ask for a drink from me, a Samaritan, and a woman.
I'm sorry. I should have said please.
It's not safe for you to be alone out here.
Nor you. Why haven't you come with others? Why so late in the day? Don't women come to the wells in the cool of the morning?
Yeah, well, none of them will be seen with me, so I have to come at noon, in the heat, as you have so kindly reminded me.
Why won't they be seen with you?
Long story.
I'd still like a drink of water if you can spare it.
Amazing what a parched throat will do. Aren't I unclean to you? Won't you be defiled by this vessel?
Maybe some of my people say that about your women, but I don't.
Yeah? And what do you say?
I say if you knew who I am, you'd be asking me for a drink.
Really?
And I would give you living water.
Would. Except that you have nothing to draw water with, and this is a deep well. Besides, what do you need from me if you have your own supply of living water?
Long story.
But Jewish water is better than Samaritan water.
That's not what I
Are
said.
you a better man than our ancestor Jacob, who dug this well? Your water is better than his?
I know Jacob. And everyone who drinks this water will thirst again. But whoever drinks the water that I give him will never be thirsty again.
Wouldn't that be nice?
The water I give will become in a
So if you're unfamiliar with that story, it's the story from the book of John, chapter 4, verses 1 through 26. We're just going to read it again, kind of go through it. It says this: When Jesus learned that the Pharisees had heard he was making and baptizing more disciples than John, though Jesus himself was not baptizing, but his disciples were, he left Judea and went again to Galilee. He had to travel through Samaria, so he came to a town of Samaria called Sychar, near the property that Jacob had given his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, worn out from his journey, sat down at the well. It was about noon. A woman of Samaria came to draw water. "Give me a drink," Jesus said to her, because his disciples had gone into town to buy food. Now this was scandalous. Jesus saying, "Give me a drink," would have broken a number of cultural norms. For one, he was in Samaria, which his people, the Jewish people, would have seen as bad. That's a bad place. You don't cross the tracks into Samaria. You don't talk to a Samaritan. You don't do that at all. Second, he said it to a woman who was alone rather than talking to her husband. Crossing cultural norms to say, no, I'm going to make sure that she gets to hear about me. "How is it that you, a Jew, ask for a drink from me, a Samaritan woman?" she asked him, for Jews do not associate with Samaritans. Jesus answered, "If you knew the gift of God and who is saying to you, 'Give me a drink,' you would ask him, and he would give you living water." "Sir," said the woman, "you don't even have a bucket, and the well is deep. So where do you get this living water? You aren't greater than our father Jacob, are you? He gave us the well and drank from it himself, as did his sons and livestock." Jesus said, "Everyone who drinks from this water will get thirsty again. But whoever drinks from the water that I will give him will never get thirsty again. In fact, the water I will give him will become a well of water springing up in him for eternal life." "Sir," the woman said to him, "give me this water so that I won't get thirsty and come here to draw water." "Go call your husband," he told her, "and come back here." "I don't have a husband," she answered. "You have correctly said I don't have a husband," Jesus said, "for you've had 5 husbands, and the man you now have is not your husband. What you have said is true." "Sir," the woman replied, "I see that you're a prophet. Our ancestors worshipped on the mountain, but you Jews say that the place to worship is in Jerusalem." Instantaneously, drawn away from the fact that this guy just told her, "Hey, I know about your life." And what do we try and do when we get caught? We change the subject, right? If somebody came up to you and told you, "Hey, here's all the things that are broken in your life," what would you do? I would either run or be like, I have to take this phone call. "Excuse me, hello, yeah, it's me." We run from that kind of thing. And that's kind of what she did here. But also call out the fact that prophets don't come to Samaria unless they're coming proclaiming judgment. "Okay, I get it. You're here telling me all the things." She had heard it before. She had heard it from a ton of people in her life and from all the women that she tried to avoid by going in the middle of the day. Here comes the judgment. Jesus told her, "Believe me, woman, an hour is coming when you will worship the Father neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem. You Samaritans worship what you do not know. We worship what we do know, because salvation is from the Jews," meaning himself. "But an hour is coming and is now here when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth." Yes, the Father wants such people to worship him. It was no longer about gigantic religious ceremony. It was no longer saying, "You're allowed to worship, y'all are not." Jesus was coming to break down the barrier and tear it in half. The woman said to him, "I know that the Messiah is coming, who is called Christ. When he comes, he will explain everything to us." Jesus told her, "I, the one speaking to you, am he." Now, if we take a look here, this is the first time that Jesus publicly reveals himself as the Messiah. Hold that for a second, because we're going to talk about that a little bit. But we see in this such an amazing story of what Jesus came to do, and what culminated all in the day that he was crucified, and 3 days later, what we're celebrating today, when he was resurrected from the dead, to set us free and to love us without condemnation. But we see in this story three things. First, Jesus sees us. Again, do you ever I had a friend in college who one time saw my social security number on a piece of paper. And about once a month, he would just walk up to me and just quote my social security number to me. And at first, I was kind of like, oh, this is that's funny. And after a while, I'm just like, dude, you have got to stop. If you're going to steal my identity, just do it. Just go for it. And he's like, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding, right? And then he'd quote the number again to me. And I'm like, yeah, that's great. Thanks. You get that nervous laughter. Because when somebody knows you intimately, it can be a little scary. And it can be a little much. And it can feel like a little much. And Jesus here lays out this woman's entire history without knowing her, without having met her before, and said, here's how exactly you're broken to the very core of you. And where so much of that would have been, I'm coming down on you, I'm here to condemn you, like she had experienced over and over and over, he just lets her know that you are seen. You know, it can be so easy in our world to stop looking at people and to, even kind of ourselves, just to walk by completely, as part of the scenery, right? And sometimes that feels way more comfortable. If you've ever been a video game player, any gamers? I know my brother. Yeah, okay, a couple, all right. There's this concept in gaming called a non-playable character, an NPC. NPCs, they can be enemies, they can be friends, they can just be kind of like people that are there. But they're just there to take up space, to help you further quest, that kind of thing. But you can't play them. They're pretty meaningless overall for most of the game. And they're just kind of there to remind you, hey, you are the hero, you've got a quest. And it can be really easy for us to walk through life feeling kind of like an NPC. You're not that important. You're not that known. You live, you die, you go to work, you come home. That's all your life is. But I will tell you that Jesus looks at you and sees you. That Jesus knows you to the very core of who you are. Let that scare you just for a second, all right? Sit with that fear. Sit with it. Because he knows you and he sees you. So much so that the same God who from Genesis chapter 1 created the entire universe with just his voice, container, filling the container with animals, filling it with water, filling the sky with stars, and then shaped man from the clay of the earth, who created all that with just his word, says in the Bible that he knows and numbers every single hair on your head. Or face, because some of us less blessed. That he sees us. If we go back, can I go back through my slides for a second? And we look at that very last verse where Jesus told her, I am the one the one I'm speaking to you. I'm that Messiah you've been looking for. It's really easy to say, oh, that's cool. He revealed himself. But we have to understand that this was the first time that he revealed himself to the public. And not only that, but he chose to do it to a woman who had been married, divorced, sleeping around, which means that she was a pariah. She was an outcast in her own society. She was a Samaritan, which means that she was an outcast from Jesus' society. And she was a woman, which means at the time she was an outcast to all society. And Jesus took that moment to say, no, I see you. And not only do I see you, but I'm going to tear down every wall here to let you know that I am the God who came for you. And I love you, and I know you, and I see you. Next, that Jesus frees us. I love that Jesus didn't come at this woman with a very harsh tone. And I love that video too. I don't watch a lot of like Christian TV. You can pray for me a little bit maybe, but I've watched that video like a dozen times. And every time, including just now, I'm like sitting over here like, I'm not gonna cry this time. Because it's so amazing to watch the God of the universe sit down and just be like, hey, can you get me a drink? And then not to come at her with all of this harsh attitude, but to say, I didn't come to condemn. I came to set you free. You know, church can get a bad rap sometimes because we're often told, hey, we love the sinner, but we hate the sin. You know what gets heard in that typically is just hate the sinner a lot of times. So let's just be real. But Jesus looks at you and he says, no, I see you. I know all that you've done. And he's not saying it like that parent, you know, who finds your internet search history and says, I know what you've been looking for. Not like that harsh parent, you know, who comes at us and said, what's the speeding ticket we got mailed to us? You know, not that harsh parent who says, I was listening in on your phone calls. How dare you say that about me? Comes at us like a father who sees us in our brokenness and says, I love you. I see how busted up and broken you are. And that's okay. I'm here to set you free. Imagine being told everything you knew, just like that woman did, and then running into town screaming, I just found somebody who told me everything about me. Like, isn't that terrifying? Does that really, like, am I the only person scared by that? Like, anytime somebody knows, like, a personal piece of information, it's like Ron Swanson from Parks and Recreation, where, you know, like, he hid his birthday from everyone, and then all of a sudden it got found out on an ice cream gift card, and he hid because he didn't want that to be known about himself. Like, that's scary. And to think of all of the terrible things that you've done. Think of all the bad stuff that typically gets brought up, you know, in your mind when you're trying to fall asleep, right? You know, it's all those things that can keep us up at night or can drive us to like be completely insecure around ourselves or around other people, who can drive us to do things that we wouldn't typically want to do. You know, when we were in Philly, we worked a lot with folks who were trapped in addiction and were living out on the streets and, you know, had like just the stories that we would hear would like curl your toes. Not just because of the tragic things that had brought them to the point where they're, you know, sleeping out, you know, on a sewer grate showing us the grate burns because like they had nothing else. But what got them to the point where they felt like, if I don't do drugs, then I have to deal with the pain. And if I have to deal with the pain, then I may just end it. Jesus sees that. Now imagine the joy of having that freedom in the moment, of saying all of the shame, all of the sin that had gathered inside of me, everything that about me that's broken, I can now say, hey, I know a God who sees the dirty side of me and loves me. And to run into town sharing, hey, he knew about my infidelities. Don't you kind of want to keep that to yourself? I used to. I don't anymore. Because now he set me free. In like a moment, all of those things that had held this woman down are gone. And man, when we look at the story of Easter, when we look at Christ's death on the cross, he came to take away all of the penalty of sin, everything that's held us back for so long, everything that will take us into a dark eternity. And he says, no more. And then when he raises up to death, he's just like, oh, I'm sorry. I just had one more enemy to defeat. It's done and over with now. It's finished. That's why we get together on Easter morning and we say, he is risen. He is risen indeed. That's why we see stories like Mary, who thought Jesus was a gardener, and he's like, hey, Mary, it's me, Jesus. And she freaks out. That's why we see stories like Peter and John, the disciples after after they were told, hey, Jesus is back, yo! And they go running off toward the empty tomb. And they see an empty tomb there, nothing there. Because in that very moment, that final enemy, sin, shame, death is dead. Death is defeated. That's why we see verses like 1 Corinthians 15, where Paul says, death, where's your sting? Like, you have no power over me anymore. That's the kind of freedom that she experienced in that moment. You ain't got nothing on me. I'm sorry you have all the receipts on the brokenness in my life. I've got news for you. Jesus took care of that. And that leads us to our last thing, is that Jesus forgives us. I know that among us, I know because it happens to me. There are those things that keep us up at night. There are those things. Do you ever have one of those moments throughout your day that you relive in the shower the next day? And you have those shower conversations and you're just like, now part of me being the collective me, not just me, we say, well, if I could go and relive that, I would have said this. Boom. Argument one. If I had a microphone that was not expensive, I'd drop it. I win the argument. Right. Please tell me I'm not the only one, right? Okay, good. Okay, good. Jesus has your receipts. It's okay. You can share it just a little. But some of us, we relive those moments over and over and over again until they become a core part of who we are. Did you just hear the balloon pop downstairs? I love it. Easter egg fun. We relive it over and over in our minds. We relive it until it becomes a core part of our identity. We relive it because we can't let go of it. And Jesus comes and says, it's done. You're good. I got you. In fact, that's what his whole death on the cross was about. Taking all of the penalty, all of the wrong that we have done on himself and for himself. That's why we get to see him raised to life 3 days later, because he had that last enemy to defeat, and then it's over. You're set free. No more sin, no more sorrow, no more shame. You're good from here. And that's what Jesus wants to do in us today. And that's what Easter is all about. Maybe you're like this woman coming here to the well, carrying not just the weight of your water cans, but carrying the weight of all of the wrong that you've done, carrying all of the weight of the wrong that's been done to you, carrying the weight of eyes looking at you, whether they're real or imagined, that you think everyone's staring at you and saying, I know what you did. I know who you are. Jesus came to set you free. Jesus came to wipe the slate clean. Dunzo, nothing more. Forgiveness. And all it takes is for us to acknowledge that fact and say, all right, Christ, I'm yours. And starting there. And so that's our invitation today. As we go throughout this day in Easter, as we go back to our families, as we go pick up our sugared up kids downstairs, as we go to enjoy our day and we go out for dinner, there's that quiet moment that's going to come. And just like happens to all of us, it's going to hit us. It's going to hit us like a wave. I tell you today that saying yes to Jesus means that the slate is wiped clean. It means you're done. It's over. No more sin, no more shame. And you're forgiven from there. So I'm just going to ask you, if you'd close your eyes with me, we're just going to pray for a moment. But I'm just going to ask as we pray today, if you're here and you're in that situation, where if you would look and you say, if anyone reads my receipts, I'm done for. If anyone looks at my life and truly looks at it, then they would not want to be around me. then they would not accept me. They would not love me. I tell you right now, there's a God who loves you more than you could ever possibly know, and he's already seen you and seen it all. And so your journey of faith may start today just by saying yes to Jesus. No one's going to ask you to be perfect from there. No one's going to say, all right, your life starts again today. You better do it right. No, it ain't like that. It's a journey. It's a relationship. He's going to walk with you. And he's going to, like we sang earlier today, he's going to start doing that change in him. When we look at his grace, when we look at that mercy, when we stop looking at the condemnation, when we stop looking at the brokenness, and we start looking at his grace and his mercy and forgiveness. And so if that's you today, I'm just going to ask if you would just slip up a hand, and we're just going to pray with you. Nothing fancy. No one's going to bother you about anything, but if that's you, yeah, I see that hand. That journey of forgiveness can start today. We just say yes to Jesus. Let me pray for us as we close. Father, I just thank you that you're a good God. I thank you that you're a God who sees us, who loves us, who knows us from the inside out. And yet you don't come at us with condemnation. You come at us with love and acceptance and forgiveness. Lord, I pray today that you would keep this word in our hearts, Lord, as we go through and celebrate Easter and enjoy time with our family and friends. And Lord, I pray that you would just help us to keep our eyes on you. Father, help us, just like that woman did, God, to revel in the fact that you are a God who loves us, that you've saved us and set us free. And help us to walk in that freedom today. Father, we love you. We give you thanks for all this in Jesus' name. And everybody said, Amen. May God bless you as you go into this Easter season. Go have fun with your family. And again, if your kids are under kindergarten age, you can take them downstairs for the kindergarten portion of the Easter egg hunt. If you just want to watch a bunch of kids run around and trample Easter eggs, go for it. I'm sure there's extra candy too. Enjoy.